Uh, Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session of IMAGO Art and Tech. Today, we are delighted to be joined by three outstanding cinematographers who will share with us their experiences working with high-end Sony cameras. What makes today's conversation especially interesting is that our guests come from three different film industries and cultural backgrounds. Even in today's globalized world, those different perspectives continue to shape the way we tell stories and approach cinematography. We are also to pleased. Um, mm, we are also pleased to have Sam Pares from Sony Electronics with us, as well as Lars Petterson, FSF, who will be moderating today's discussion. So I'll give the floor to Lars to present our guests.
Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of IMAGO Tech Talks. And we're joined this evening, or it's evening in Europe anyway. I suspect most of you are in the first half of the day. But we are joined here today by several distinguished guests, colleagues, and directors of photography. And there has been a flyer sent out with short presentations of the participants, but probably not everyone in the audience has seen these presentations. So I thought for the convenience of everyone, I'll just say a few words to do a short presentation of our guests here. And I was going to start with Sony's representative, Sam Fares. And Sam is a veteran broadcast and digital media production leader with over 20 years of experience at Sony. He is based at Sony's DMPC, which I think is Digital Media Production Center, right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, in Los Angeles. And he works closely with leading cinematographers and directors to advance virtual production. From developing workflows for flagship camera systems such as the Venice to leading hands-on masterclasses on advanced LED volumes, Sam bridges the gap between cutting-edge technology and cinematic storytelling. And we'll be talking a lot about Sony cameras, particularly the high-end cameras. But Sony has a whole ecosystem of cameras, and you can really pick and choose a bit, and not only use the high-end ones, but also some of the on the lower tier if you want them for a special GoPro kind of shot or something like that. So maybe a good starting point here would be if Sam, you were to just briefly show us what kind of stuff we're talking about here.
Sure. Thank you, Lars. I appreciate it. Can you guys hear me okay? And can you see my screen? Yes?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. And it looks like in order for me to share the screen, I have to allow some settings here. Okay. Can you guys see my screen now?
Not yet.
No. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. 1 second. I might have to close out of Google. It says here. I'll be right back.
Okay. So maybe I should continue with presenting the other guests. That could perhaps be a good idea. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Lars.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just while Sam is preparing, I'll just continue. Or Sam, how are you doing?
Good. I think I got it now.
Okay, great. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not letting me share my screen. Hold on a second here. Entire screen, not sharing. This is my first time using the StreamYard. Sorry about that. I apologize. Let's see. I'm sorry, Lars. Go ahead and continue introducing everybody else. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I'll come
So,
back.
yes, no problem. So we go straight now to our illustrious panel of guest stars here. And first out, we have César Charlone, ABC. Do I pronounce that correctly? Okay. Thank you very much. And César is a Uruguayan cinematographer. You studied at Sao Paulo Film School. He received an Academy Award nomination for City of God, BAFTA Award nomination for The Constant Gardener, starring Ralph Fiennes, I believe, right? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Two other among his most acclaimed works as a director of photography are Blindness, directed by Fernando Meireles, and Stranded by Gonzalo Arijon. Right. He has also worked with renowned directors such as Spike Lee and Tony Scott. In 1980, he directed the documentary When I Get Older, and he has been directing TV episodes, commercials, music videos. In 2006, he co-wrote and co-directed The Pope's Toilet, which was selected by Uruguay as its official submission for the 80th Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. So, moving on to Europe and France, we have Paul Guilhaume, AFC.
Hi.
Did I pronounce that correctly, Paul
Yeah,
Guilhaume?
Guilhaume. Yeah.
Oh, Guillaume. Okay. So Paul is one of the most distinctive French cinematographers of his generation, known for crafting powerful visual narratives across feature films and television. His credits include Léa Musius' The Five Devils, Jacques Audiard's Emilia Perez, and Paris' 13th District. And he combines technical precision with a bold visual sensibility. And he has had collaborations with some of today's most acclaimed filmmakers, and this has given him his work's international recognition. And you won a Bronze Frog at Camerimage, and have an Academy Award nomination from last year for Best Cinematography, if I'm correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we move on to a combination of Greece and the United States, I think, with Phedon.
Hello.
Hello. So, do you represent primarily the United States or Greece, or
Both equally.
both equally? Okay.
I feel strongly both ways.
Okay. Good. Well, anyway, in our little presentation, we wrote that Phedon is an Academy Award nominated Greek cinematographer, internationally recognized for his expressive visual storytelling and enduring collaborations with leading filmmakers. Over a career spanning more than 40 years, he has worked with Alexander Payne, James Mangold, George Clooney, Oliver Stone, Wim Wenders, Nick Cassavetes, and John Turteltaub. His credits include Sideways, Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, The Descendants, Nebraska, Ford versus Ferrari, The Ides of March, Identity, The $1 Million Hotel, and The Monuments Men. And I don't understand how we failed to mention Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, but he shot that one as well. His work has received BAFTA, ACBC, and Camerimage nominations and international honors. So we have a wonderful lineup here of cinematographers from Uruguay, France, Greece, the United States, Colombia with Adriana, Sweden, myself, and Hungary is represented here by Laszlo Kovacs on the T-shirt here. Yeah. So Sam, how are you doing?
Can you guys see my screen?
No. I mean, we see you. Now
Okay.
we do.
Yeah. Now we see it. We
All
see
right,
it now.
perfect. Thank you so much.
So take it, Sam.
All right, thanks, Lars. And so, first of all, I'm honored to be, part of this virtual stage with all of you. You're all my heroes, and so I'm a fan of your work, and just honored to be invited to be a part of this. So thank you, everyone at IMAGO, and also Adriana for inviting me. So real quick, we're just going to talk about the Sony side of things, but I know obviously I have not as much of a history as you guys do in the filmmaking side of things, but I did start working with Sony Pictures 23 years ago, right out of film school. My dream was always to make movies, but now I'm working together with you guys to help develop the future cameras and also the tools and the different also production tools that like virtual production are being used now. So combining the software and the hardware side, I helped develop the F65, the Venice, originally as a product manager back in 2012. And since then have just been, really working together with you guys to help hear your voice and then also make new cameras to help you tell your stories. So the whole idea for Sony as a company is that we have the lens to the living room story, and that we also are listening to the filmmakers and the creatives. And so we have a very unique solution. Not only do we make our cameras, but we also make LED panels. And in addition to that, we just released our new camera tracking system that connects to our Unreal Engine plugin, and then also our 3D spatial content creation. So mixing virtual, like live augmented reality or XR mixed with production. So this is kind of our whole ecosystem solution. And as you know, just last week, we released our new FX5 camera. So we have a full lineup now. As Lars mentioned previously, everything from very high-end cameras like the Venice 2 and the Burano, all the way down to a sub $2,000 camera that has a super 35 millimeter sensor, which is the FX30. But the thing I want to really, highlight in this very busy slide, obviously, is just the comparison between all these cameras. But the thing that unifies all of them is the color science. And I think that's the most important part, is having a unified color science workflow so that you can use any of these cameras as an A camera or a B camera and be able to match them, or even use the same 3D LUT on a Venice that you could on a FX5 or FX2, and be able to do those real easy cuts between those cameras. And as a lot of you know, you've used many of them simultaneously on productions. I love what you've been doing with our cameras, so please, continue to do those amazing images. I guess I'll pass it on if you guys have any other questions later on about the cameras or what we're doing in the future. As you guys know, we recently announced the new Rialto 65, which will be our 65 millimeter sensor. That is not a new camera. That is just a new sensor that will connect to a Venice 2. So that's been great news. Hopefully by next year, we'll have some footage that we can show you guys on an IMAX screen. So thank you so much. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sam, for that introduction.
I didn't want to take too much time because I do want to hear what everybody else has to say as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we have some questions that are pretty much straight to you, Sam. So we'll get to those a little later on.
Sounds good.
So I've been handed questions here about S-log3 curves and stuff. So
okay, great.
We'll get to that later.
Yes.
But I want to start out by asking our three cinematographers here on how, under what circumstances, and on what projects you began using Sony cameras. And anyone in any particular order, you just raise your hand or something or start talking. Okay.
Well, I'll start before I forget. Yeah, so I came across actually, ironically, the FX30 and the FX3 about 2.5, maybe 3-4 years ago on a commercial, and the reason was it was a shoot where the actor had to basically hold the camera and film himself. So it just seemed like a good option. And then shortly after, I did an Apple commercial where instead of bringing a big motion control rig, I thought we could do these little precise wraparound moves again with the FX3. and on that occasion, I discovered how it looked good enough, certainly for a television commercial at 12,800 ASA. So that was, my first sort of impact towards being really interested in that. And then shortly after, I started pre-production on A Complete Unknown, and I had talked to James Mangold, the director, about, we typically shoot anamorphic. Of course, that was going to be a Venice 2, but I was looking at $1 Million Hotel, which is something I shot, 20 years, 30, I don't know, many decades prior. And I was looking at how the C-series anamorphic sort of shot on 35 really were not so shallow depth of field, even though I was shooting at a 4. But I felt like on a Venice 2, the expanded anamorphics that Dan Sasaki was building, basically out of elements, B-series and C-series elements, which is the quality of glass I wanted. But I felt like it's more representative of the film look I was going for, and sort of the quality of the anamorphics on 35 if I shot it more like an 8-stop. It just felt like that's closer to a 4-stop on the anyway. And since I wanted it to be as much as have that feel of the movies I used to shoot on 35 millimeter on anamorphic, I decided to test the Venice 2 at base 3200, but 64, 12,800, and I had a series of colorists sort of develop LUTs for it, and we projected it all big. In conjunction, I also shot the FX3 parallel because I wanted to see how that holds up. And I must say, the results were, very satisfactory to me. I mean, didn't really see any noise on the projection, although sometimes on the monitor, even now I notice it. It looks like there's noise ingrained, but it's something more with a video thing. And then, but on the big screen, it looked great. And then, I was intending to do a film out anyway, and I figured whatever, noise there was, it would sort of be buried in the film grain, because we lasered it out to 5203 to a negative, and then scanned back in. And I just thought that really gave me a huge advantage over, let's say, with Alexa. Up to that, I've done all my shows on Alexa LFs, and it's because I could do my night exteriors at an 8-stop and really not have huge lighting setups. So we were shooting primarily nights in the streets of New York, and I didn't really want to, have huge lighting setups. It was, in a way, smaller budget movie. We were restricted, and I also wanted to have the freedom of playing these clubs where Bob Dylan played, and all with, very sort of dim, practical period lighting, and I wanted to do the night exteriors that don't look like lit night exteriors. So that was my journey into Sony, and ever since I've stuck with it. I've done the same approach on dozens of commercials, and recently transitioned into using the Rialto Mini, because I'm old and I can't really do a lot of handheld with the big cameras anymore, and I'm quite fond of Rialto Mini. But I've lost it. Oh, here you guys are. Okay.
So, César, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I can continue. I'd like to mention a story. When I left school in 1974, I was very into the image, but since I have a musical background, my grandmother was a music teacher, my grandfather was a music critic, so music was very much in my life. So sound was very important to me. So I always was related to image and sound. And one thing that caught my attention when I left school is the fact that the sound guys could monitor the sound on one place and capture it in a microphone that they could move anywhere. And I said, the day that we have an image that we can do exactly the same. We can see it here, but we can capture it moving. We're going to be much freer. And that I've been looking for a long time. Since some time ago, I met a guy that introduced me to video goggles. So I started operating cameras with those video goggles that allowed me to, for example, be in a motorbike and be riding in the back seat and holding the camera right by the foot of the driver and bring it up like that and not have to have my, because I was seeing in those video goggles. So that changed it. And I've always been related to the cameras that make it easier for video goggles. So when I met Rialto and the mini Rialto, that was like perfect. And I was going to do a show for SONY, and it had a lot of driving, so I could put the Rialto behind the steering wheel or behind the clutch where you do the changes of the march or whatever. I could move it around or be behind it. So it allowed me to do a lot of things because I was seeing the image in the goggles and moving the camera very light with this. So that is something that caught me, and I've been using it since then. Besides, the quality of the sensor is very, very good. This last film that I did, we took the sensor to 32,000 ASA or something like that. You know, it was ridiculous how much we could. And you know, I'm kind of old. I started in Brazil in black and white, and we celebrated when color film appeared. And then afterward, we celebrated more when 500 ASA film appeared. It was like a huge liberation. Look, 500 ASA. No, now we're talking of 32,000 ASA. You can, you know, film with candlelight or whatever. So it's challenging, all this new technology, and well, yeah, that's what brought me to SONY, and I'm very fond of, and Samuel has been very helpful.
So thank you, César. Cool. On what kind of projects and at what time in your career did you start using Sony cameras?
No, funny enough, it was a Sony camera that brought me my first job, because I did graduate shooting a film. It was in 2014, a documentary called 1 in a Million. It was shot in Los Angeles, and it was a documentary about young guys trying to make it and living in LA. And this film was seen in a student screening by a French director of documentary that I love, who's called Sébastien Lifshitz. And he directed this film called The Invisibles, or Adolescents, that we shot together. And during this screening, he just came to me and asked me how it was shot, because he was shooting a film with the same visual approach. It was a documentary in 2:40 ratio, and actually it was the same camera, the Sony f5 and Ingenieux lens, and both of us had the project to film a documentary as we would film fiction. So on a bigger sensor with something that was unique at the time, or very rare, this quality in the colors. And so that was my first paid job. And then when I met Jacques Audiard after a couple of projects in film, actually, he came to me with a project that would be shot in black and white. That's called the Paris 13th District, and it's kind of a first film in his career that he did later in days. I think maybe Coppola did Twixt after Apocalypse Now. Jacques Audiard had shot already a Prophet, which is a masterpiece for me, and he wanted to do something a bit more light and free with Paris 13th District. It was a black and white film about youth in Paris and their love and their pains and everything. And the one reference he gave me was Lenny by Bob Fosse, which is a wonderful film that I recommend everybody to see for the quality of the black and white. And telling me to see that film, he just told me the only thing I really want is a shiny black and white, and that was the only direction I had to work from, actually. The idea that we would shoot a shiny black and white. And then I had to figure out what was a shiny black and white. There's maybe a little image that can be displayed or will be displayed later, I don't know, about what was it. And it came to the idea that, of course, you need a white reference and maybe a black reference in every image. Sort of what you can see even in Nebraska, for example, where you see that there's this attention, or in 8.5 by Fellini, and there's always a pure white and a pure black in each image. And because of the limitation of the screening in the cinema on a traditional video projector, if you don't do that, if you don't create an image with highlights inside the frame, maybe in each third or something like this, or if you stay too long in an image that's really in the low part of the signal, it starts to be gray. And this can be used masterfully, like in Zero Dark 30, suddenly there's no reference of pure white in the ending sequence, but that's another level. And so I had the task to make a shiny black and white. And I had a memory of lens tests at Ingenieux on a Venice, and there was something that when you put another camera with maybe an older lens, and it was in a corridor, in a mine actually. It was looking towards outside the mine in a long corridor. And we put two cameras side by side, two lenses side by side, and switched. And I have the memory that thinking that with the Venice, it's so more shiny. All of the micro contrasts, the little shiny specks on the sides of the corridors. On one camera, it was like a blown out door and a dark corridor. It was very beautiful. And the other was something completely different. You can see the walls almost like there's a wet down on the walls. So I had this memory of the test, and that made us choose for the Venice, with another thing that Jacques wanted to be very, very light. He told me, I want to see the modern beauty of a face lit with an iPad. And obviously, I think that's maybe now 7 years ago, it was one of the only cameras able to do that. And also we were shooting in the high rises of Paris 13th district, very modern one, and it was the 15th floor. You cannot imagine doing anything from the outside. So we built Roscoe polarizer mounts with magnetic frames that we were able to put on the windows in daylight to be able to control the amount of how much you blow out the background for daylight. But with that, you lose almost 3 stops. I don't remember exactly. So yeah, that was the reason for the Venice one, especially on this project.
Okay, thank you everyone for answering the first question. And actually, I wanted to, in various degrees, you've all sort of nudged at how you all began, but I think that many in our audience may be interested in how you all started out. What awakened your film interest to begin with, and how you got a foot in the door, and probably some early breakout production which set you on the path that led you to where you are now. Sometimes people start out doing documentaries and wind up doing features. Other people start out as gaffers and become DOPs. So would you briefly, anyone wants to pick it up? César, perhaps?
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, one thing I have to bring up that is very important is that we live here in the most unfair continent in the world. The unfairness here is shouting. You go out in the streets and you see these beautiful, expensive cars driven by a young lady, and sleeping on the side of the street is families that have a place to. So when I left when I left, not film school, before I went to film school, when I left school, I started being a still photographer, and I used my still photography to denounce, to show, to share this poverty and to make people conscious of that. And once I went, I was part of a film club, and I saw a film by Pino Solanas, an Argentinian director, that was a documentary that spoke about this unfairness. And I said, that is what I want to do. I want to do political cinema that shows the unfairness. And so I went to study film to do this. And I tried always, I've had like a parallel life. I made money doing commercials, but with this money, I would do private documentaries. Like, for example, this film that appears in my curriculum, When I Grow Up, it's a film that if you see it, it doesn't have credits because I did it during dictatorship. And I would be in danger if the militaries discovered that I had done that film. Sorry, it was a film that was used by political movements in Uruguay to denounce the atrocities that the dictatorship was doing here, kidnapping people and taking their kids and letting them kids alone in another country, and it was terrible. So I did films for that, and I actually have had always this parallel life of doing political documentaries. Like I have the pride of having filmed Lula, Brazilian president, when he was a starting trade union leader in San Bernardo. And he was a worker, and I was there filming him, and I did lots of documentaries. I did a documentary about the birth of the PT, that is the party that is now in government. So I've always had this parallel life doing documentaries, political documentaries, and I've always tried to choose films that have some influence in showing. Like, for example, I'm very proud of having done City of God, for example. That is a film that made Brazilian people very conscious of the other country that was inside their country. And just for you to know, I never took my kids to a set of film except for City of God, because since they were middle class, educated in nice schools in Sao Paulo, I wanted them to see this other Brazil, because it's honestly another Brazil. There is a frontier inside that, when they did the World Cup recently, they built walls to separate the middle class neighborhoods from the favelas and where the people live. So, this is terrible, and it's our reality, and we struggle with that. So I've always tried to make film a tool for that. And well, there was a period in my life when I was doing feature films and commercials, and I had a video company that was called Montevideo, like the city where I come from. But we did lots of videos of trade unions and political things. And so, yes, this is something that is related to our life. We live with that. At the moment, for example, we open the newspapers and all we read is how the government is trying to reduce the poverty and so and so. So that is our reality, and that's what moves me.
Okay, thank you, César. Thank you. So, Paul, you touched upon it a little bit, but you went to film school, I think. That's how you started out in film school, Paul?
Yeah, I was in film school in a school called La Fémis in Paris.
In Paris, yeah, okay.
La Fémis, woo.
Yeah.
Great school.
Yeah, it was a great school. The idea of this school, and that's very rare, is that there's no teachers. There's just professionals coming to teach their craft. And We had lessons with Ricardo Aronovich or Yorgos Arvanitis, the incredible Greek cinematographer, and these guys came to us with a world always. And I remember leaving this school as a succession of what I called maybe revelations almost. Ricardo Aronovich taught us something very simple. It was that I understood that you don't just build a light in one direction, mostly from a window, like horizontally, and build the x-axis, because he always had a filler on top. So that means that if you are a little bit on the side, this is maybe the brightest part. This is a little less bright here, but here it's even darker. This is the darkest part. So he builds with the y-axis also, with the idea that you can, and I got this revelation because I was very young, that suddenly, okay, this is our job. This is to build the three-dimensional space, and same with Yorgos Arvanitis. There was other revelations, and that school was great for this.
Okay.
Nice.
So Phedon, I think you started out in very good company, the same way that Francis Coppola and a lot of other guys did. The Roger Corman Film School.
Yes, that's correct. Paul, I just want to say I was just hanging out with Yorgos last week. Yeah,
you know, Yorgos changed my life, and as a cinematographer, he told us something so funny, so strong. I don't know. I think each time I turn on a camera, I think about his phrase, which is, "You have to be like in your maximum focus, because what you will record is for the eternity." And that's typically Yorgos' phrase, but he was so generous. He took us into his country house to teach us how to light at night. So
I mean,
say hi to him.
We were just at the GSC Awards, and he's telling me, I'm gonna direct now. I have this one shot, single shot short film that he's directing now. So, and he's 80, he's 85. He's incredible. He's so youthful, as you know, and he's he was so excited, like a young man talking about this. It's sort of a new experiment for him, and like directing. And anyway, but yes, Lars, I did well. I went to school in Germany, not film school, just did my Abitur, my baccalaureate, and I was like César, I was a still photographer, mostly. Had come out of painting. I kind of was fine arts student, and then went into stills, and so I came to New York. I traveled to New York, and I had seen. I always tell this story, so forgive me for. I had seen Le Mépris, by Raoul Coutard, of course, and it was kind of similar to the still photography I was doing at the time, very graphic and colors, and But then I go, oh, okay, you can also move the camera, and you can also be assigned a story. And I was sick of being a still photographer, because I was always traveling with my two Nikons, one with black and white and one with color, and I kind of always felt like I'm either ruining the moment because I'm capturing it, or I'm upset because I'm not capturing it. And I like the idea of being given a story, and then when I photograph that, I'm done, and then I can go to Greece and just sit there and look at the little boy by the harbor, and not, feel like I have to constantly create some kind of spectacular image. So I came to America only with some stills, and I got very lucky. I mean, I wanted to explore film school. I didn't really have the means, but somebody saw my stills and said, oh, you should shoot my short film. And I go, I don't really know how to shoot. And we had a Eclair MPR. It's a 16 millimeter camera, as you all know. Well, Paul, you're too young maybe, but I'm sure you know it. French camera. And I learned how to, there was a one-page user manual. Literally, it was one page, and how to thread the loop and load it. And so I studied that the night before, and then we went out and shot this short film. And so that led, then the next person came, oh, you shot Liz's short, can you shoot my short? And then I never stopped. This was in 1984. And, so I never got a chance to go to film school, including I shot UCLA graduate films, and Alexander Payne, who, of course, much later we collaborated with on 4 movies. He was the boom man on it. I actually had interviewed him for his graduation short at UCLA. He didn't hire me, but I did a different UCLA grad short that he was the boom guy on. So, but we all lived in the same neighborhood in Silver Lake next to the Vista, and we always went to the Vista Theater. Back then in LA, there was the New Art, the New Beverly, the Vista, and that was my film school in terms of, I would see 2 Tarkovskys, 2 Pasolinis, 2 Kurosawas, it was amazing. There was also something called the Z Channel that my cousin Zan Cassavetes has made a documentary about it. It was kind of pre-net, obviously Netflix, but like you could watch, they would play all week, they would play Fellini movies, and then all week Werner Herzog movies or Fassbinder movies. So that was also, again, and I keep telling film students now, I'm always in shock, when I work on sets now or I go speak at how so many of them have not seen a Buñuel movie, have not seen a Truffaut movie. I'm not going very I mean, Paul, I'm sure for me they well, you get to anyway, I mean, you're exposed to different things, but it's really surprising to me how in America they just not familiar with the works of those classics, I guess, that were most of our influences. I'm not just talking for myself, I'm sure. But yeah, then, one of these short film directors ended up getting a job at Roger Corman. And I went in there and, I had interviewed for Robbie Miller to become a camera assistant. It's not like I did. He was here doing a Barfly with Barbet and Schroeder, and then I didn't get the job, although the interview lasted 2 hours, and we talked about, it was at the time, and of course always a huge Robbie Miller fan, probably my biggest influence. So it was very exciting to have this 2-hour interview, but then, I didn't get the job, but I did get to do with Claire NPR behind the scenes. So I interviewed Charles Bukowski and it was so, but anyway, not to drag on too long, I ended up at Roger Corman. I didn't really know how to light. The only thing I had seen was I watched Robbie Miller on Barfly, and Frieder was the gaffer, and this is pre-Kino Flow, and they were using fluorescent tubes. So I went to Janusz Kaminski, who was my gaffer. He was still at AFI on the set, and I go, we got to use these tubes, uncorrected, and and so we kind of just, we didn't know how to light, so therefore we were very fast also, which was the #1 requirement at Corman, is that I did 7-8 features there in 2 years. They were all 15-day shoots, 3 5-day weeks. And we would do like 60 setups a day. And so that's basically my film school. It was great because, we would work like a mini studio. It wasn't like a student film where everyone helps and does everything. We had a key grade, we had a gaffer, we had a studio head. Roger Corman would come and say, don't use the dolly, it takes too much time. So we would hide the track and yank the camera off the dolly when his Mercedes pulled up in the parking lot. It was, we had to, there was already a structure that, I experienced doing studio movies, that anyway, it was, so that's how I got into it.
Very
Yes, and
nice.
a Swedish connection is, I think Roger Corman was actually the US distributor of the later Ingmar Bergman movies, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, he also, I think, distributed Amacord, then, because I remember seeing these posters in his office and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. I just on a side note, we just had a screening at the Academy for Poison Ivy, which is with the director Kat Shea that I did 4 Corman movies with, and it was interesting. I just saw a film projection of that, which was shot 1990, and I've spent so much effort and trying to get to that look again, especially with the Sony and the film out process I've been doing with Photocam and David Cole, and I feel like I've really gotten close where I'm very happy with the trying to emulate or get close to the quality of that. But it was quite a revelation, actually, watching this Poison Ivy projected on a 35 millimeter print at the Academy. And it was, wow, that was really, also, it was really gutsy. Like, I remember I was really gutsy back then. It's like, I mean, it was so dark, no fill, and just how, not having the latitude, and how the blacks, and then just like Drew Barrymore walking through these shafts of light. And I go, I don't know, it's like we were so brave back then, Anyway, it took me 40 years to sort of reapproximate that after being, sidetracked by studio productions and certain safer looks that were demanded, in order to, and it took me a long time to sort of be able and find a director and find filmmakers that, were more open to that. Anyway, that's a long journey that came full circle, maybe, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. So next, I wanted to introduce the subject at the camera as a tool, because there's a classic story of, I think it's the author Somerset Maugham. He visits Hollywood and he says to a cinematographer, I admire your movies. What cameras do you use? And the cinematographer says, I admire your novels. What typewriter do you use? So it shouldn't be about what technology really, but on the other hand, we all prefer certain tools. So briefly, you've already touched upon it, but what is it with Sony cameras that you find particularly attractive, and why do you choose to work with them?
That's a great question, Lars. So I've been working at Sony for so many years, primarily because I'm fascinated by the engineering team. And I'm just really impressed at how well the engineering team develops these sensors and these cameras, sometimes at such a fast rate, but the fact that they make their own sensors gives them a lot of control over color science, gives them a lot of control over noise. It gives them, the quality assurance that they're doing. When I go to Japan, every year, and I get to meet with these engineers, I see the hard work that goes into implementing and testing and making sure that, the images are faithful to what the cinematographer is looking for. And, Phedon, just so you know, every time we show the Complete Unknown trailer, people are like, that had to be shot on film. So it's amazing how you've taken a digital camera and made it look like film. And so thank you for that. I've always been a fan of film cameras, and I've also been kind of rooting for Sony to make a film camera, but they always laugh at me. But, digital cameras, the way you guys are using them right now, the higher base ISO, being able to go to 12,800 and shoot, a very low light situations like you did on a Complete Unknown, that was really impressive, and
Actually, Kanji, I was just on the phone with him, Darius. He said when I saw Complete Unknown, he was convinced it was shot on film.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yes, it's amazing what you did. And can you maybe later on talk to us about that? You said you were working with Photocam on the. Is it still called AI? The
Shift
analog.
AI.
Yeah.
Shift AI, analog intermediate, but Photocam calls it Shift AI.
Okay. That's great. I mean,
it was really kind of first explored with Greg Fraser on Dune and on a Creator, I think. Yeah, and that's when they started, testing different stocks to go to negatives, and also once you're in the photochemical realm, you can stay in there and do IP speed bleach bypass. You can do all kinds of things and then scan back in. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a really cool process, and I appreciate you sharing that with us too. One thing, a story of Phedon that I remember before the pandemic. This was probably, I don't know if you remember this, Phedon, but you came to visit us back in like 2020, early 2020, right before the pandemic hit, and we had a group of students at the DMPC here in Los Angeles. They were there learning about cameras, and you were there just hanging out with Dan and myself. And then we're like, hey, do you mind coming in and talking to the students? You had just finished shooting Ford versus Ferrari. And you came in and did a great presentation. Even though you didn't shoot it on a Sony camera, you were just so friendly and kind to talk to the students. And they remember that till today. So
yeah, I remember that. But I remember I knew nothing about Sony at the time. And I was actually there because I was looking to get a free TV from Dan somehow. So the only reason I went there was like exploring new because my plasma, the Pioneer or whatever I had at the time was about to die. So I was freaking out that I'm not going to have a good television anymore.
Oh no.
But that's the first time I think you just had up on a tripod the Venice one with the first Rialto.
That's right. You're right.
And he was explaining it to me, and I go, "This kind of looks weird, like this thing with the cable." And so anyway.
So in addition to that one, then after having worked on projects with Sony cameras now, are there any characteristics of their image that's become part of your own visual language? So anyone, feel free.
I mean, definitely working in much lower light levels, and also, in conjunction with everything that's happening with the lights, the LED. I mean, I'm still a huge fan of tungsten. I always carry park cans, and on stage I still have 10Ks and 5Ks and Maxi Brutes and Dinos, and I like that. But just traveling around on commercials and often coming into a new town. I just shot in Cairo, and new crew. I mean, just the ability, and the flexibility to, if they say we don't have this, we don't have that, I know I'm always safe. I can, I literally can do a scene with one person hand holding a little Roscoe dash light with a silicone dome on it, and I know I'll be okay. It'll look good, So I mean, that gives you a lot of, it's liberating. And also, just for speed and getting things done and doing night exteriors and never really having to worry about, like, are they going to be able to do this or prelay the cable? I mean, I'm gives me a lot of confidence to, especially because I travel a lot and in a lot of countries with crews I'm not, haven't worked with. And so, I mean, it definitely changed my overall approach. And, I have a little wireless DMX it. I run the lights. I have it next to me on the dolly, and I do all my lighting and my painting, let's say, off the monitor I operate. I have a Sony 17-inch OLED, and I use that as my LUT loaded in. I mean, you guys mentioned LUTs earlier. I mean, it was very important for me to develop my one on Complete Unknown, and I've been tweaking that from project to project slightly because it's very contrasty and a bit yellow, but it's the first thing I do. I always order the Sony cameras when let's say I get a job in Cairo. I go Sony Venice 2s, Rialto Mini, and then I send the DIT or the first AC. I always send them my LUT. That's the first thing. So in prep, they put that in, and that's really what I work with on set. And I'm very familiar with it. I know no matter what they do and the grade or and I always make sure that the dailies and it goes to editorial with a LUT, and that everybody views it with that, because that's my intent. That's conforms with the lighting intent, and typically they stick to it even when they do the final, when the agency, let's say, does the final grade. I mean, they've lived with this look the entire time, so it's kind of baked into their own aesthetics that they're looking for. So it's very important. But just that consistency, and then knowing that you have there's low light ability and so much latitude, but also enables you to change things later. But I that's really gives me so much safety and security, especially with the kind of work I'm doing now. Yeah.
Paul, do you want to chime in on that?
No, Phedon said a lot. So no, there's one little detail that personally I think is very important. On the Sonys, you can adjust your NDs per one stop increment, and many times you don't have the luxury to. It's like this, at least in France. The auteur cinema is now around 3 million per film. Euros. So we have to shoot in, let's say, typically 25 days, 28 days, a whole film, and you don't have very often the extra 1 minute to just change ND. So that's a detail that's very appreciable. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And actually, I think you correct me if I'm wrong, Sam. On the Burano, you can continuously. You could do iris pulls and stuff and keep the same depth of field.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lars. So so a few differences between the Burano and the Venice. So the Venice is meant for being a system camera where you're running with a first AC, sometimes a second AC, right? So you don't have autofocus, you don't have auto ND. So you do have as Paul mentioned, one stop increments, 8 stops of ND, and that's part of the part that. The usability on set is really important, right? It's not just about the image that you can get from the camera, but it's how useful it is and how kind of a partner it is on the set. So that point, exactly great that Paul made was having the NDs be inside the camera. With the Rialto Mini, they're now slot in, so you can slot them in front of the sensor because we were able to take away the rotating ND filter wheel. That's what made the Rialto so much larger originally. Right. And so having that now able to do that inside the camera is amazing. Plus obviously the dual base ISO, adding that plus the ND filters. So it's really more of like a usability on set. And as you mentioned in the Burano, there's a feature called variable ND. So it doesn't give you the full 8 stops of dynamic range that you would get with a Venice or a Venice 2. You do get 7 stops of dynamic range. It doesn't start at the 0.3, it starts at the 0.6. But once you're at the 0.6, now, like you mentioned, I can go in from a very bright environment to a dark environment or vice versa. And then the ND will kick in and kick out as needed, right? And I could, like you said, I could do the iris pull and it'll kick in and kick out as needed as well.
Yeah, Sam, we actually, my DIT, I mean, I haven't used Burano, but I do use the FX6 a lot. I actually make that my main camera on a lot of commercials recently. And my DIT also, he hooks up like a motor to the variable ND, and he pulls a remote ND from his DIT tent. Yeah. And that's really
because
great.
the one, I think from what you say, Phedon, and it's something that maybe changed with the time. Today, with those modern cameras, the T-stop is just a question of texture and aesthetic. As you said, for the complete unknown, you can decide for a T-stop. So all of the other parameters of the camera have to be able to change a lot and very quickly to keep this creative
exactly.
direction.
And in order to, let's say, maintain my 8 stop in all situations. I mean, I just switch ISO and I mean, that's really, really great. Yeah, that I don't have to open up and go wide open, and we're like, trying to pump more light. Also, if you're doing variable speeds, it's like I don't have to build everything up to a certain stop, because I know at some point the director is going to go, you go like 200 frames a second. And, I remember that used to be a nightmare. I used to have to light everything with 10Ks and just to be ready for that. And so it's great.
Phedon, I like that you mentioned about the, your confidence on the file format itself. And I think that comes, to the reliability of the codec, which is the 16-bit linear codec, right? That's giving us that negative that we can really use and adjust and have that flexibility in post to play around with it. And it comes from that 16-bit capture from when we went from film to digital. And as we scanned every frame, we were capturing it at 16-bit. So then Sony engineers were like, well, why don't we make that our negative, right? Instead of trying to think, hey, how do we get to the 16-bit scan from film? Let's just make it as the 16-bit capture.
Right.
So, César, would you like to fill in a bit what attracts you to Sony cameras?
Yes, I want to bring something about my background again that will help understand. Is when I was a stills photographer, very young, 14, 15 years old, I taking these pictures of poverty and so, I would go out in the street and click and take those pictures, but then I would go down to the lab that my grandmother had given me a room in her basement, and I had done a lab there, and I would spend hours and hours manipulating the picture, painting it, reframing it, and so on. So that taught me a relationship that I carry up to today. That is, I capture a frame to work on it later. I rely very much on post-production, and I bring the
I think maybe we have a bandwidth problem here.
Yes, but while
Still
César,
on?
Oh, there he is.
okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So I work very much on post-production, and this post-production I started in pre-production, because I go to sets and I take some stills or so and go into the colorist and work with him. What do you think if I burn out this window a little bit more, and so and so. So it's I always joke that my way of working is 40% in pre-production, 40% in post-production, and 20% on set, because I want the set to be as easygoing as, I to interfere the minimum possible to the holy triangle that is script, director, actors. That's where the film happens, and I don't want to be changing filters and so. So I just, I try to capture raw the best possible, and then in post-production we'll work on it, we'll darken the side here, we'll reframe here, and so on. So this is something that these Sony new sensors allow me to do a lot, because they have such a great latitude that, we can go and play around and see what we get afterwards. And that is another thing, because I believe that when we're doing the film, the script is a starting point, but then in the editing you will find another story, and maybe in the editing this character grows and this action is not so important, and so when you go to do the final color, maybe you're doing the final color of a different film, or a film that has changed. So this emphasis that you gave here with the light, maybe it's not so important because now this character's no. So, change. So I believe very much in this moment of seeing the film edited and saying, okay, then what I'm going to do is this. And I work at home on Photoshop or whatever tool, just to do like croquis, like drafts of what I'm going to do afterwards in the final color. So that is something that I carry with me. And yes, Adriana?
No, I have a question, but I got you, sorry.
I'm not listening.
No? You listen?
I don't have Adriana's sound.
Do you hear me? No? Do you hear me?
We do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
I can hear you.
I have your sound, but I don't have Adriana's sound.
Yes. Yeah, we hear you, Adriana.
I hear both of you. Yes.
Okay, you can maybe pass the question to
Is my
César.
computer
Lars.
machista?
We hear you, Adriana. You can just post your question.
Okay. What do you think about the possibilities we have with Sony to capture in with different tools in this ecosystem, we can call like that? I know Cesar use a lot other type of cameras in the same film, but what do you think? Do you use, for example, FX3 and Venice at the same time in some films?
Cesar, did you hear her?
No.
Okay, she's asking, do you mix the cameras on one project? Do you, for example, use an FX3 with an FX6 and a Venice 2 on the same project?
Yes, I'm going to admit something that I don't know if you're going to like very much, but I'm using iPhones a lot. Yes, for example, in this last show, I had my Venice, and the Venice I would go in a wide shot and then attach to the viewfinder, to the shade. I had an iPhone with a tighter lens, so I was giving the editor two shots, a tighter and a wider.
Well, you should attach a FX5 now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, yes, I have to try it. I've read a lot about it, and I like it a lot. But the iPhone is so small. I did this film, for example, about camels, and they were milking the camels. I could go with the iPhone in between the camel's tits and have a tit in the foreground and the face of the person in the background. No, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And on this series that I did for Sony, that I was moving inside the car with Colin Farrell, I would hide an iPhone on the dashboard, another iPhone behind the hand wheel, and and I had Sony moving around, so it gives you more options.
Yeah.
And that's another joke that I say is, on the set, my issue is not quality but quantity, because the quantity gives in the editing the quality. The more the editor has, the better, because sometimes there's a shot that you believe incredible, but then in the editor he can use. So I try to give the editor as much options as I can. So this having multiple cameras allows me to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So-
do the same. I mean, I just did a sort of street photography documentary, and we would also throw in FX3. And I have to also admit, some shots, just because I'm walking past something, I pull out my iPhone and I get it on the iPhone, and some of it ends up in the edit. But I try to shoot everything at least with the FX3 in addition to my Rialto Mini, but or my FX6. But I must say, like you said, Cesar, in the edit, especially, I mean, some of these shots are like 2 second, 3 second shots. So I mean, you can definitely
they match
throw in.
perfectly.
Yeah, they're fine, especially if you have a good grader and
Yeah, I go to the grader with my pre-shoots, and he tells me, well, go with the iPhone until here, don't go wider, or go, he gives me the parameters, and I get, tied to him.
Cesar,
and by the way, one more thing. And by the way, what I use on my iPhone is a Blackmagic app. So I would suggest Sony to do an app for iPhones and make it match with the Sony cameras.
That's a great idea, Cesar.
That would be great. If Sony puts out an app that, we can go 4K and low contrast RAW and so on, so and so, that matches with their sensor, that would be great.
I agree. And also, you brought a good point. So a lot of the iPhone's sensors are Sony sensors. So the Sony obviously makes about 80% of the world's sensors. So the sensors in the iPhone, you're still using a Sony sensor in
Yeah.
there.
So we're all good.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
So, Sam, a technical question for you.
Sure, Lars.
The current cameras offer close to 15 stops of dynamic range, but this still seems to be a bias to the lower end of the scale. There's only about, I think, about 6 steps of usable stops above middle gray, and especially people shooting in South America have to deal with highlights a lot. So is this something that Sony wants to tweak out in the near future to expand the capacity for handling highlights?
Yeah.
Well,
so right
if your base stop is, let's say, 800 and you are shooting 1600, you're shifting the scale to protect highlights more. So I do that.
yeah, you do.
Yeah, I mean, so even at 3200, I typically, if I want to protect highlights more, I go 64 or 1280.
Yeah.
So that's one way to handle it.
Yeah.
But the way I understand it, Sam, the S-Log3 for the cameras is about 10 years old or something. And
It is. Yes. So the S-Log3 is kind of what's limiting the dynamic range right now to maxing out at 16 stops. So that's why we always end at 15 or plus or 16 stops, because that's where the S-Log3 kind of has its limitations, right? But to Phedon's point, the EI, or the exposure index, does allow you to then protect your highlights, or at least expose for those, different latitudes. And having the dual base ISO really allows you to get that extra stop, or kind of save the shot at the end of the day.
But is it on the horizon to develop a new log?
Is it Log 4?
I can't discuss that, but obviously, Sony's always developing new things, right? So I'm not sure how that's going to tie into when we have a bigger sensor like the 65 millimeter, right? I don't know how dynamic range, they haven't tested out quality assurance on like the quality of the noise in the dynamic range for the larger sensor. So that's still kind of a test. And if it's necessary, I'm sure they'll develop an S-Log 4 for it. But right now, that's not in the plans currently.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So you guys, the DPs here, I'm curious what attracts you to a project? What are your criteria for accepting to work on a project? Is it something in the script, or is it a collaboration with the director, or is it some other aspect that attracts you to a project?
It's always a combo, but my first consideration is the screenplay, and then immediately who is directing it. So I will have a script, and then depending on the director, go, this combo is not ideal, or I'll have a script that I find maybe not so strong, but because of the director attached, I see its potential. So it's a combo of those two things. And then I always like to know the cast also, and location, because when I read it, like I read very slow. It takes me, unfortunately, like hours and hours to read a screenplay. But when I connect with it, I literally see the whole movie kind of finished in my head, like especially if I know the cast and I see it like edited and color timed and sound of it. Like Nebraska, when I read it, I saw the whole movie sort of finished, so it was obvious to me what kind of lensing and what kind of, it's just, so when that happens, that's obviously great. There are other scripts, even by the same director, where I couldn't see it at all. And, so that's it's tricky. And typically, if I can't see the movie when I read it, even though it takes 4 to 6 hours for me to read, if I can't see it, I typically try to not do that film.
Okay, César, you say you started out with a political agenda in a way. Do you look for something like that in projects? A way to
Yes.
your
Yeah, I always joke that when the clock rings at 4:30 in the morning and you have to get up, it's not about the money, because the money could do it in commercials. It has to be something worth it. It's what I'm doing is worth it. Is gonna make somebody sitting in a chair of the cinema think and say, yes, I have to take care of this. Or, I'm not very much into typical entertainment. I prefer a film that says something, that brings something up, about our society, about our relationships, about humans. So yes, that's what guided me to choose. And also, as Phedon said, the director is very important, because it's a marriage. You know, I have a picture here in my wall. You can see of me sitting down with Fernando Mireles in a marital bed. We were gonna film a love scene, but we were waiting there, and we sat, and the production took this picture of us sitting there. So it's like a marriage. It's a very important decision. I have a story that I always tell. Walter Salles, the Brazilian director, you probably maybe know, he was a producer of City of God, one of the producers, and he visited the scene, the set of City of God, and I didn't know him, but he came up to me and he said, "César, I know your work, it's great. Thank you that you're doing this and that," and very nice. And he said, "But let me ask you something. Is everything okay with you and Fernando?" And I said, "Yes." "Why?" "Because I see the whole day you haven't talked anything." And I said, "I don't need to. I spent 20 days before shooting talking about every single thing. So I know what he wants. I know where I want to go, where he wants to go." So yes, I I believe very much in this pre-production, sharing images and doing so and so, and doing tests. And these cameras today allow you to go even on location with a camera and shoot and get your DIT to do a little pre-color. So even better. So yes.
So, Paul, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, there's very little to add, but no, I think like you said, Phedon, that there's I try to see if I can see something interesting, and sometimes you read a script and the only images that can come into your mind are very bad, and it's not necessarily that the film will be bad. Very often I turn projects down, and it was doing great films at the end, but I was probably not the right person, and it's very often the question. Also, it's very easy to turn down a script if you say I'm not the right person. It's much less offensive, and it's often true. And I would say also that no, I think also we tend to maybe accept a project because it resonates with the previous one, and often we are trying to do something different from the previous one. Right now, my fantasy is to use only one lens on one film and just do fixed shots. I would just do it for free, And so I think sometimes you just
Don't say that. Don't say that in public. You're gonna get a lot of calls right now.
No, but I mean, sometimes you just dream of doing one type of project, and it comes, it arrives, and that can be can be the
I've been
right
saying the
moment.
same thing. I've been saying I want to do one lens.
Yeah, I think we all want to do one less project.
I have a quick question. I know you guys talked about pre-production, but how about post-production? Is it in your contract that you can go into the color grading room, or is it based on project? Like sometimes you can go into color grading, sometimes you can't, or do you make that part of your contract?
We've been fighting for this a long time, and I don't know if a lot of people have, but with my agent, we discuss it all the time. We're trying to get it. It's kind of limited to 2 weeks in my case. And obviously off. Most of the time, I need more like 4 weeks. But even like on Indiana
4
Jones, which was so much work, I did 5 weeks. But they will only in a side letter, because technically, like, the studios don't even want to put that on paper. But we have this agreement, and then we create a side letter where I get 2 weeks guaranteed. And then I have been able to say I need another week, and then the post-production supervisor has to ask, and it's really unfortunate,
Yeah.
that this is still. I know, like, Roger and Chivo, and they get to. I mean, I think Revenant had 16,000 hours of DI. I had 90 on Nebraska, so it's it's. And then I talked to, like, I was talking to Ari about the built-in LUTs, the built-in settings, like, that they had on the that they have on the 35 Alexa 35, and I go, they seem so minimal, like, it doesn't seem worth it, like, it's just something I can do in the DI. He goes, it's a lot of these people, especially in television, they never get, so at least they're baking in a little something, like a little grain or a little a different look, so I realized on that occasion, that a lot of DPs don't get to do any of it.
Mhm.
And on commercials, I mean, they call and I join the sessions remotely, and I've been quite satisfied with that. I mean, I do it on my iPad. I have a designated iPad for it. It's pretty. I mean, I've been happy with it.
Mhm.
But it's. I realize a lot of DPs never get to be involved in post.
That's sad.
I got 100% involved, as I said, even more than in filming.
Yeah.
I put that in my contract. It's in my contract that, and I don't get jobs if they're going to interfere with the color. That, like, for example, I did a film recently that I have to color now, and they're calling me for other jobs, and I say no, sorry, because I'm waiting for the color of this film that I did. So to me, it's a huge issue, this color, because I change things radically in with the colorist and sharing it with the director, obviously, but I do a lot of work in post.
Nice.
We don't have questions. We invite the assistants to pass the questions about through the chat. But meanwhile, we are going to share a photo of César. César sent us a photo.
Oh, wow.
That's so cool.
Just to have an idea.
Well, there you are. I have on top of my head there, you can see there's the Sony camera that's probably doing a wide shot of the car. And with that iPhone, with that tele lens, I'm doing a close-up of the driver.
That's good.
That's awesome.
And on the goggles, I can change from one image to the other.
That's so cool. Yeah, you sent me a couple of those pictures, Cesar. I love them, man. That when you had the Rialto Mini in your hand, you had the goggles on. That was really cool.
Yeah. It's great.
So,
Thank you, Adriana.
So audience members listening to this, you're welcome to send your questions in here, and we'll post them to our guests. It seems to me we've all of you here have been talking about LUTs. On the previous episode we had Tony Miller, BSc, and Dan Lauston, who was fresh off from Frankenstein. At that time, this was in November, I think, last year, and they said they basically want no LUT, or simply use one LUT and go with that LUT on all the projects, as if they were shooting film in a way. Is this something you guys can relate to, or do you guys want to use different LUTs on different projects?
I stick to this LUT I developed, that I have developed, and I over the year I might adjust it a little bit. but it's just like maybe a little less contrast or a little bit. Basically, it's the same LUT, and that's what it's just like knowing my film stock. You know, I light to that LUT.
Okay, so you're basically doing the same thing as Dan and Tony then, in a way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Okay.
Me too.
same.
Okay. All right.
So,
Well,
yeah.
that's
I
interesting.
developed a lot that I use, and I like it because it's better than a Rec 709, but it's not too flattering. The problem if your LUT is too elaborate is that you stop lighting, and you have to be fighting against the image a little bit. As I had the image was when you shoot on film, you have to punch a little bit into the negative for something to happen. If you go too soft, it's pretty boring. And I think with the power of the digital cameras now, you can start to think a little bit like this. But I also pre-grade a lot. I pre-grade at night everything. So I send to the editor a pre-grade, basically.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. You mentioned working on film, and of course, when you work on film, you go by the light meter, and the light meter is your holy grail in a way. So how has your work evolved during the transition from film to digital? You still occasionally use the light meter to check that you have consistent levels, or do you light by eye or by the monitor? Or?
I light by eye, but I was lighting by eye even on film. You know, like I could light. No, I mean I knew my camera and my viewfinder. I mean my Panavision viewfinder, and it had the little so ND thing, and I knew the stock, and I knew the brightness of my viewfinder, my viewing system, my optical viewfinder, and I literally could do exposure through that. Like, I mean, after, you know, not from the beginning, and of course you do some reference checks, but I know I'm pretty much like on film. I knew I was always 2.8.5, you know, and I could see if I'm a little underexposed through the camera. I mean, I just, you know, I felt it. It's like I felt that's gonna blow out, and and then when I transitioned to digital on my first job, it was a Judd Apatow movie. This is 40, and you know, we wanted to go digital because he would do like these 20-minute, 30-minute takes, and it was very much sort of feeding lines, and I go, okay, I don't really care that we're doing it was the Alexa Classic, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to approach it the same way I always did. I'm just going to light by eye. And then I would light it by eye on set and then go to the monitor. It would look horrible. So then I would stay at the monitor, and my gaffer was on set, and I would say, turn this off, turn this off, turn this off. I go, now it's looking good. And then I would go to set, and it would look horrible to the eye. You know, so that was because it would look dark and muddy, you know, and when I would light it by eye the way I would light by eye with film, it looked overlit on the monitor, you know, even if I stopped down. So I had to adjust and transition, but I still light by eye. I mean, now I just light off a monitor. That's why I have my lighting monitor on my dolly. I operate off of it too. I never use a viewfinder. I can do it. Some people hate it. It's like they can't do it. They go, I don't know how you do it. I can literally be like, he's this. But I need my lighting monitor, and I light off the monitor with my LUT. But it was an adjustment. But I still feel I'm still lighting by eye, you know. And I care. I mean, I still have a light meter on set. I mean, sometimes just to check something as light drops or ambience drops, or, you know, so I can check sort of like that this wall is now 2 stops less since I adjust the other levels. It's just kind of to keep a balance, you know.
Okay, César, Paul?
Same here. Same here. We, even when it was film, we used to light by eye, and then with the light meter, we came and see, oh, let's bring this one 2 stops down, this one a little bit, you know. So we do the same in digital now. Because when we do the lighting, the camera is not there. So I use, as I showed you, my light meter I have on my iPhone. So I'll do a little analysis of what I have there. And then when the camera comes, maybe I do a little final touch of something, but I have like 90% of it there done with the light meter in the pre-lighting.
Okay, Paul.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's something interesting in what you said, Cesar and Phedon, because to me the difference between working film and digital, more than the end result, is that with film you start with the idea and maybe the fantasy of the image you want to create, and you start the day or the shot or the sequence with this idea, and with digital you often you arrive, the camera is almost already on set on, and the AC who is good or already maybe picked the right lens because he read the script, and so and you just start your day adjusting, and maybe you can come to the same result, but it's from both ends. On film, I have the thing that you start from nothing and the idea and just create to get there. And the problem maybe with digital, if you forget to just try to find this original idea you want to pursue, is that you just work and you just do adjustments, and that's where you kind of you can lose it and you can lose the idea and the reason why you are here and as a cinematographer. So, yeah. But it's just I try to, when I start a sequence, I try to imagine how I would have done if there was no monitor inside, and then I work on the monitor. Yeah.
You guys ever use the false color or EL zone or any of those tools?
No.
No? Wow. Awesome.
But I am just curious. Paul, do you study originally in digital?
Oh, it was mixed. It
Yes,
was one of the
because
last generations. We did our focus exercises on 35. We were the last
yes,
generation in the school to do that. Yeah.
okay. I studied also at the FEMIS, but I studied only with film, and I had to learn after
Yeah.
digital. So I used the waveform a lot.
Mm.
So a question on cinematographic style. Do you prefer your work to seem invisible to the audience, or are you okay with the audience having a feeling that the whole thing feels lit? So do you want to express yourselves through a personal style, or do you want your work to be invisible to the audience?
It's our last question, Lars.
Okay.
So we don't have other questions from the audience.
Okay.
So
I always try to have people. I mean, I don't really do very stylized projects. Of course, this doesn't always apply to every story, but like I try to always have people not be able to detect that there's artificial light involved. Like I always try to have a logic of what's happening in terms of practicals and where the source is coming from, and not really be anybody able to identify, okay, here you bounced the baby into this card, and so I always, that's, yeah, anyway, yeah. I never really want to impose, like, it's very important for me that people don't see the movie and go, oh, Phedon shot that. Like which with some great DPs that I admire, I can do. I can always say Vittorio shot that. But that's why I admire the DPs the most. Like, I mean, Roger did Sid and Nancy, and then Mountains of the Moon. Like, I'm talking in the beginning, and he came from documentary, and he could also do very cinematic and very, that's why I mostly admire DPs that can do that, and the other DPs I admire are the ones that can work with minimal lighting and really take advantage of natural light or natural practicals, like Robbie Miller. So but of course we all grew up also admiring Il Conformista in 1900 and 1900, and I mean, so there's, we it's not like, but it's like what you said, Paul, earlier, also about the scripts. Like sometimes I read something and I go, it's not that I think it's going to be a bad movie. I go, I'm just not the right guy for it. Like I can copy that style, I can copy Storaro, I can copy Roger, but it's like I'm not the best person for it. Like I see some amazing, French movies, and now I'm part of a European Academy. Luckily, I can see all these movies. It goes 20 years back. I can watch them, and I'm like, this is great. Like, but I couldn't do, like, it's all handheld, very gritty, and it has like a different emotional energy. And I go, I wish I'm just not good at it. I'm more a classic. I like compositions because I come from stills. I like track. I like laying track. So it's like you also gotta choose and play into what your language is, of course, but still within that, I never want to impose my style. That is, like I do want the story to dictate, and the script dictates it normally. And even if you go in with a preconceived concept, like $1 Million Hotel, like Wim Wenders, I was kind of in shock. He goes, 3 days before a shoot, he goes, I don't really know how to shoot it. And it was very excited to work with them. And me as a little rookie grasshopper, said to him, don't worry, I think the building will tell us how to shoot it. And that's exactly how it was. Like we also, like you said, Cesar, like we never talked. And I was like, I'm so excited, I'm working with them, I'm going to learn so much. And we never talked because I grew up with his aesthetics and Robbie Miller and the compositions, and he never looked for the camera, he never commented, he never made me change anything, lighting or composition. And I said to his wife, who's a still photographer, Donata, I go, that's weird, like Wim is not, because he likes what you're doing. It's like, and in the end it looked like, maybe like if Robbie Miller would have shot it, I mean, God bless it, I mean, we would have us had the similar language. I mean, the language is dictated through the director and the script, and our job is to interpret that. Whether they can express it technically what we want to do, some are very technical, like Fincher and Gore Verbinski I work with, and but Nolan, but others, like, they go, I want the camera to go, woo, woo, woo. Yorgos Avanitis was telling me, I put him on a movie in Montenegro, and he goes, I can't, this director, she goes, woo, woo, woo. I don't know what it means, woo, 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 and, so we have to feel, Gore Verbinski was always expressing it in cartoon tones, like it's more like, beep, 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 I go, okay, I got it. So that's our job, and that's, I think, where the beauty comes of our collaboration with the director, and is finding what's in their head and us really giving it to them, even if they can't express it often.
Okay, there's an audience question here that ties into what we were just talking about. We have a question here from Mauricio Vidal. How do you manage working with a new director for the first time? How do you approach to get into his or her mind?
I try not to work with new directors for that reason, because it's always a risk, and at this point I don't have a lot of movies left in me, so but I have recently worked with a first-time director, and we did Dario, and it's always, because when you meet him and when you prep and they can talk all the right talk, and then it's still always a discovery of how they actually function on set, and how much of what they say they want to do they will actually do or are capable of doing. So it's always a risk, but I also did enjoy it. I do think it's good to work with different directors. I mean, it's just my safety is going back to the guy I've done 7 movies with and another guy I've done 5 movies with, because I kind of know what to expect, and I'm a little worried about taking risks on a project, losing 6 months of my life when I don't have that many movies left in reality.
Paul, maybe you are more
No, if the question is, but you can read the question as how do you handle first collaboration? And there is a whole part that's understanding the words that the director used. Like everyone has his language. For example, if someone tells you, "I want to be closer," it doesn't necessarily means that you have to bring the camera close. Maybe you just have to put a longer lens on. So after a while, you just build this common language and have even words that only the duo understands at first, because you just create common references.
Yes. Okay. César, do you want to chime in on that
Yeah,
one?
yes, as I said, I give a lot of importance to the pre-production, and so reading the script, getting the first ideas from when the director sends you the script, and then having long meetings with him. Maybe I can sit down and have 2 days of meeting, and I said, you know what, I'm not prepared for this film. Maybe I can tell you name of other cinematographers, because it's there when you can feel if you can, if you should, or what. So it's very important, this reading the script, talking to the director, even if it's new or whatever. I've worked with directors that were doing their first film, but they were so keen and so in love with the story, and the story was so amazing that I said, I need to help this guy. I need, so then you jump in and you go. And there's some others that it's so so superficial and so, so full of trends or whatever that you say, no, I'm not going to be really helpful here. I can tell you other names. So yeah, it's this initial relationship is very important.
Okay. Thank you. So that was an audience question. Adriana, I don't think we have that many audience questions.
There is one.
Yeah, but is this a question? Oh,
No.
well, here's another one here. There's another one here. Here. From Kaka Mitsu Badze. When you
Oh,
first read,
Georgian.
yeah, it could be. When you first read a script and decide to take on a project, I imagine you already start seeing the film in your mind through your own visual style and aesthetic. How closely does that first vision match the final result?
In my case, when I read the script, I imagine very many different options, and then I will talk to the director and see which way, and then I will try. Then I'm going to tighten my options and see if that aesthetics I'm helpful doing it or it's not my cup of tea. So yes, it's all about the relationship. This marriage that I was telling you about, it's all about that marriage, because he is the one that is signing the film. It's his film. So it's important that your job is what you were asking before about the strengths of the cinematography. I related very much to the music. It's like the music. There's a moment, for example, when something very dramatic happens, that you go with the music like that. Well, I don't mind that the photography does something like that. If the photography, but maybe in the rest of the film it's natural, it's realistic, but at some point you want to make a statement. The music does it, and the image can do it. So and that obviously you come to agreement with the director, and you show him examples and so. So yeah.
Okay, Paul, you have any notes on that one?
No, but I think I'm not the only one to. You can visualize different things, and then I'm in a long period of. I don't know. There is something going on, but you don't really know what. And for me, it's one day, just something clicks in, and you don't have the final film. You have kind of the soul of what you are going to do, and it depends then so much on everything else. The costumes are not chosen yet, and the set. But yeah, it's more like you get touched by something at one point. I don't know for you guys, but yeah.
For me, it takes like 2 weeks of actually shooting till we find it. I was like on Sideways. I remember I was like, it's the first time I'm working with Alexander Payne, and when we found our language, and I told him, I go, now we really got it. Now we know how to shoot this movie. We should go back and shoot the first 2 weeks.
Oh, it's sure that the first day is already terrible. That's for sure.
Yeah. But it's you feel it out, and I do truly believe the actors and the film tells you how to shoot it. But that's why we try the opposite of Cesar. I try not to prep too much actually with the director. Also, my directors don't really like to we look at movies and we talk and we have dinners and we cook, but like Alexander, he'll show me movies that are not related to the movie we're doing, like just movies we like, so we're creating more like a general bank of aesthetics and images. Like Diane Keaton, I did the movie, she was first-time director, and she would show me hundreds and hundreds of photographs, but not specifically related to what we were trying to achieve with the photography. It was like, you see the shadow of the tree, how it falls on the grass. I like that pattern. I go, okay, so but it's good because when you have to change things on set and some, a plan has to be adjusted, I have all this in my bank of her aesthetics. I know, how to make the adjustment, how to move forward, and how to stay in line with, what she's trying to accomplish. So I mean, but I do think the movie kind of tells you. It depends, like how the body language is of an actor. Like Bruce Dern, instead of close-ups, we go, he's much more expressive. Like when you see him walk and stumble around, like it needs a wide shot. And we maybe had 3 shots planned, and we do the wide, and I go, we really like, Alexander, do you agree? It's like, this tells the story perfect. The shot just told the entire story. Each scene has its story. And he goes, yeah, we definitely don't need it. Other times you go, you don't have coverage planned, and I go, did you see what he did back there? It was amazing, like how he picked up the soap bar, and then I try never to suggest extra shots, but I go, like, we got to get a close up of that. That was like amazing what he's doing back there, and so you feel your way through each scene, and then eventually the movie takes on its own character and tells you how to shoot it. Should it be more dramatic, like should it be darker, should it be brighter, like it the performances dictate. I don't really like till I see the blocking rehearsal, like Timothée Chalamet coming in, walking around in his apartment, choosing to sit on the corner of his bed in the dark corner instead of the chair by the window, which we asked him to. And I'm like, okay, but so then you adjust to that. It's like, I want to see what the actors discovering the space the same way we are simultaneously. So when I see how he moves, where he sits, is his head down? Is he not showing me his eyes? Is he fiddling with his guitar instead of making eye contact with the person he's talking to? That's what we have to be able to react to. It's a lot.
We're winding down here on time, and I'm told we have to do maybe
we have a last question, Lars.
Yeah.
Pablo, could you put the question, and we're near to close.
Well, there actually was one before that, but we could go with this one. Okay. So how do you feel traditional HMI lights work on Sony sensors compared to the new LED technology? Is there some difference between?
Tungsten works fine with the Sony.
Cesar?
Yes, if it wasn't film, it would be the same. There's a difference in the texture and difference in the color temperature. You just adapt to it and use it at your favor in your creation.
Paul.
No, yeah, I just think that once you are into a world, you choose your camera. You just choose the lighting setup for other reasons than how. I'm not in the level of precision where I think about how it will interact with the sensor.
Me neither.
I just know tungsten looks good the way it always looked good
Yeah,
on
exactly.
film. You know, I
The
don't see
9 lamps are beautiful, and that's it.
yeah the 9 lights. I mean, I use, and I mean maxi brutes, and I mean it's the same. It translates the same. The quality of the tungsten light translates the same way to the Sony sensor than it does to film. You know, it's
Yeah,
not like
and I agree with you. I always carry the PAR 64s. I love
it's
them.
great light. It's like if I had to take one light with me, it'd be that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You can bounce it. You can go direct. You can make a highlight. You can. It's so great. You have a couple of parkans, you can do any scene in the world.
There's a last audience question here, which I think is pretty good. So we should do it very, very briefly. What would be your best advice to somebody who's just starting out in the movie business? Just a one-liner from each.
Just shoot as much as you can. You know, don't you'll learn from any, even if it's a bad director, bad gaffer, bad. You know, just in the beginning, just shoot, and from every project you'll keep one. You'll learn from all of them, but you'll keep like one person. Try and create your group of people that have similar aesthetics and want to tell similar stories, because there's a million ways to tell a story. And you know, find your collaborator, find your director. You know, that's the most important. Find your directors, or find a producer that they share common goals of what you want to achieve. You know, more commercial, less commercial, more art house, more documentary. You know, and find your people. But you can only do that by shooting. You gotta like engage and get yourself out there. My son is 18. He's starting to shoot right now. I'm sending him out to shoot on everything. I said shoot this rap video, although he's not into it. You know, it's like shoot everything.
Good advice.
Agree 100%. Agree 100%. I would just add one thing. While you're not shooting, watch films. Yes.
Yeah.
Watch films from the starting of black and white until today. Watch, you know, enriching your library.
Go on. Subscribe to Criterion Collection. My son is watching all, like, since he's 13, 12 years old, watching all the Kurosawas and stuff, and you know, he's found what he likes. You know, so that's really important. Yeah. That's the best film school. Just watch all these movies. Watch all the Kieslowskis. Like, I just was on the plane and they're showing Paul. I don't know if it was Air France or something. They show Red, White, and Blue from Kieslowski. I watched all 3 of them on one flight, and I'm like, this is fucking amazing.
It's incredible.
And you know, it's like, how many people have not seen that? They haven't seen him. I'm telling people what now, because I just rewatch. I go watch Red, White, and Blue. You know, watch Decalogue. You know, it's like.
Exactly.
Okay. So this was a question from Camila Merchan, the last one there. So I don't know if the techies want to put up the question here, but it's been asked. So Paul, do you have some final advice for someone starting out?
No, I would say just watch films but have a little notebook where you write just to be able to remember. It was very useful to me to do that. And no, another thing, that just in terms of career, I think we don't have much freedom, because we get the projects, they arrive to us or they don't. But the only moments of freedom we have is when we have to decide between 2 projects. And I would say that it's very important to maybe commit for a period of time where you won't be that wealthy and everything at the beginning, because the first years, maybe I decided for 10 years of my life where I wouldn't try to live too comfortably, and just to do the project that would bring me somewhere. And I think that's something that very quickly after school you can get a lot of money offered, and that's not necessarily the right choice.
Yeah, but what you're saying, keep your I say that all the time. Keep your overhead low in the beginning, so you have
Yeah.
the freedom to make choices. Like I lived in Necker Park, I was paying $200 rent. I mean, this is, but still, I was like, I can sleep in my car if I really need to. It's like,
Yeah, and the
I
problem
did-
with commercials is that you can very quickly get used to easy money, and then you will just have no
Yeah.
choices anymore. But yeah,
yeah, don't buy fancy cars. Don't get a big apartment.
no,
Later.
Yeah. I would just like to add that, shoot with any camera you have available to you, right? Don't worry about getting the highest end camera from Sony or if you have an iPhone with you or any kind of phone, just start shooting with what you have, and that's advice I give to all the film students that come through and like film schools. Like, don't worry about waiting to get that high end camera before you make your project happen. Just go and shoot with whatever you have available to you, which now,
Absolutely.
it's a lot of great stuff out there. And by the way, Phedon, kudos to your lighting, man. You've been working with the sun, adjusting.
I'm avoiding the flare. The sun is coming
you had
up.
some flares. I was like, man, look at he's got some flares on his.
No, I'm trying to eliminate the flares. I keep rotating. I can't get it.
You're doing a great job, man. I just love your lighting.
But that's the light flex effect, also, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need a gaffer with a floppy or something on the side.
Yeah. I also have. I'm drying my towel over here, so I'm getting some bounce.
You're bouncing, yeah. I like that. Very.
But I don't really like it. I have like two. I've been thinking this should be a negative. Okay. Well.
Okay, we are right to the end. Thank you,
What a pleasure.
Lars.
thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's been
everyone,
Nice
for
to
the
chat.
Sunday morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paul, nice to see you again. And
Yes,
César, was a pleasure. And
It
good
was.
luck with all your projects in our future. May we make some meaningful stories still.
cool.
I hope to see you guys in person soon.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone for being with us today. A
Thank you,
special
Adriana.
for our guests for sharing with us their knowledge and their experience. And we hope to see you again. Have a great day and goodbye.
Thank you, Adri.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.
Thanks, Lars.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
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 Bye. Bye. Bye.
Obrigado.